using procurement, program and control. As a small biz pro, so we grow. Using procurement, program and control. I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh yeah, I'm a businessman, yes, I'm an entrepreneur.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the Business Zone with
Crystal
and Coach Gilbert Buchanan, your small business paramedic. Folks, we're going to have an amazing show today. We're going to be talking about a time in America in comparison to today. So if you're a small business, I want you to start thinking about what your business would be like a few centuries ago. And we're gonna kind of make that leap for you guys and comparison. So before we do that, though, we want to hear from my co-host. You know what she's been doing, what's going on with her co-host. How you doing?
Oh, it's been a good hello, everyone. Glad to see you guys again. Another great week with full of all kinds of action, firecrackers, all kinds of things have been happening.
And it's not
In
even
this,
the 4th of July, huh?
it's not even the 4th of July, and we didn't have firecrackers, we didn't had tariffs, we didn't had the stock market looked like a bloodbath. So it's been a wild, wild week, guys. So,
Oh man.
but on the home front, I've been busy, just getting stuff. It's the beginning of tax season for me.
Yeah.
Not the beginning, but people got panicky. But then I found out. I was at an event last week, and the person that does my taxes, my taxes, and definitely my nonprofit 990, told me I was saying something to him. I was referring some other people to him, and he said, "Oh, that's cool." I said, "But I told him to wait until they should ask for an extension because more than likely you're crazy busy." He goes, "No, I have room." I said, "What do you mean you have room? What are you talking about? It's 2 weeks. April 15th is 2 weeks from today." And he said, "Oh no, they extended the whole state of California."
Oh, the
So
whole
that's
state
yeah,
for federal and state tax?
yes,
Holy moly. That's why my
yeah.
tax preparer wasn't saying anything about, because usually when I reach him like 2 weeks ago, he said, I don't have space, I don't have time. But he never said anything this time. Stayed quiet.
Well,
Ah,
that is why because of the fires in Los Angeles. At first, it was the fires in Los Angeles. Remember, they were just for the
yeah.
fires, and then there were also floods in San Diego County. All of their counties were affected. So
Mhm.
because of that, they gave an extension to the entire state of California. So for
Oh,
those
well,
of you,
thank you, Mr. IRS. Thank you, Uncle Sam.
yeah, so that's a gift. I was at a meeting. I was teaching a class last night, and um, everybody was all panicked because of that. And I was teaching on. I was actually teaching on taxes and insurance, and the risk structure, the infrastructural risk mitigation, right?
Hmm.
And so one lady, she was just panicking because they hadn't filed their BTRC, so that was a panic. They were not sure what to do with the BOI, and so right now we're just telling everybody just go ahead and fill out the BOI. It's not going to cost you any money because it's up and down. So for those of you that don't know, the
Did you already do
beneficial,
yours, co-host?
yeah, the
I haven't done
beneficial.
mine.
Well, I actually don't have to. I'm still a sole proprietor,
Yeah,
so
that's what I was
we don't
thinking.
have to as sole props. You don't have to do one, but if you are a corporation,
LLC.
LLCs, S corps, C corps, nonprofits have to all do one. And
I hope
so,
Fernando is listening to this. Fernando, are you on? You listening to this thing? Because you got an LLC.
yeah, so they will have to do one. Um, And so that was what happened. The tax guy asked me, did I want him to do one for the nonprofit? And I went, oh, we do have to do that. He said, yeah. I said, oh, because last week it was off the table and it's back on the table. So that's what I was telling them all. And of course, there's penalties with everything you don't do, right?
Yeah.
And so they were all panicking. And then I said, but I have a gift for you. And they're like, what? What? Oh my God. Oh my God. What? And I was like, you don't have, your taxes have been extended for you into October 15th. Then it was a little bit better. It felt a little bit better about life.
Oh, it's beautiful
But
to live in the state of California.
it is. It is. Yes, it is for more than one reason. But yes, so they were very thrilled about that. One lady though, by the time I got done, poor lady, I felt sorry for her. But I'm a truth teller, and I tell things in the real. I don't lead you down no Sunnybrook Farm about entrepreneurship and taking and running your business. One lady's like, "Oh my God, everything you said not to do, I did. I am just going to quit right now." It's just the misnomers that are out there, Gilbert, are so funny. And I had to use one of your favorite lines, the street corner consultant,
Oh yeah.
because um, someone was asking, "Can you just walk away from an LL from a corporation?"
Walk away?
Yeah, walk away from the corporation.
There's
And
no
I
walking
went,
away.
"What do you mean walk away?" He said, my tax person, his H&R Block tax person, told him that, oh, if there's no money coming in and you're not doing anything with it, you can just ignore it. It's nothing's happening to it. And I said, well, there is something happening every January. He goes, what? I said, you're being charged $800 if you have not dissolved it. Then you're going to get that lovely $800 charge in January. Come February, you're going to have that. And then if you don't do your BTRC, you're going to get another 500 no what $358 charge. And if you don't do the BOI, it's 591. So I don't think you want to ignore or walk away from anything. And so he was like, oh my God, oh my God, this is horrible. He told me. Why did he tell me that? So I told him, I said, well, my business partner, I'm gonna move my light over here. My
Yeah.
business partner has a saying that you should not be listening to the street corner consultant. So don't get your business news or your business information that is going to cost you money from the street corner consultants. I used your phrase last
I
night.
love it. I love it, co-host. I love
So and a lot of them had, and so that was my class last night. So, but yeah, so I gave everyone a treat today. If you're in the state of California, this is only in the state of California. Your taxes have been extended to October 15th, but you can get them
it.
done before that time. But but for the people that uh, were affected because of the fires, because they lost everything, and because of the floods, and they too lost everything in San Diego County. That is your treat for the day.
I think my tax preparer was being slick. He just wanted me to pay him in advance, so I didn't have to wait until October. Because he never
Oh,
told me
he
any of
never said anything.
that. No.
Sneaky.
Oh.
Yeah, because that would have been a bill you would have waited for until the end of the
Yeah, I
year.
wouldn't mind waiting to pay that bill then for another 6 months.
Sneaky.
Oh man.
Yeah, so that was pretty much my weekend. Other than that, it went by pretty fast. Everybody, I had not disclosed that information, so a lot of my clients, that's what I was doing, helping them get set up their books and QuickBooks and put everything in the right chart of account so that they can run their reports.
Co-host, I think you should share your successes with our audience, man. You've been doing that water aerobics for quite a little while now, and it's showing. I
And
can
it's
see it.
showing.
I can see it, man. You're shrinking over there.
Yeah, I'm shrinking. It's wonderful feeling. I hit one the milestones, and not at the total milestone, but yes, it's I've been eating right and I've been working out, been doing water aerobics 3 times a week and line dancing 2 days a week when I'm not
Mm,
teaching class somewhere, and I feel good. I told I was telling my sister, I said, it's nice to walk down the stairs with both feet, both feet, well, with feet going one at a time instead of coming down 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot,
one at
1 foot.
a time.
Yeah, but walking down the stairs like this
Oh man, that's great. That's a great feeling.
without knees hurting, back hurting, some kind of ache or pain, and just come on
Oh,
down the stairs, man. Just hop
I
on
used
down the stairs.
I used to hear my mom say that, and I used to laugh at her and say, "What are you talking about?" Now I know,
Now you know,
because it's
right?
my turn.
Yeah, you gotta take one. You gotta take one step at a time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's nice. In fact, last week I went to a play. Well, not last week, the week before I went to a play, and I even wore high heels, like 3 inch high
Wow,
heels, and did my and walked from the parking lot to the theater and back to the
that's
parking lot,
that's
and I did not
amazing.
feel like I had to take my shoes off halfway to the car.
That's a great accomplishment, co-host. Very good
Yeah,
accomplishment.
so that was worth the sacrifice of minimize eating and working out so much. But it does feel good. I will say that. So,
Well, I
health
just wanted
first.
to share that with the audience because I know you're too modest to tell them. So
Well, thank you.
I
I mean,
figured,
I didn't. I mean, I see it, but I didn't think anybody else saw
oh yeah, man. I noticed your shoulders are shrinking over there. I'm going, wait. Before when you sit there, it's like I'm going, all right, it's working a little bit.
it.
Now,
It's working.
now I'm seeing the big difference. I'm going, ooh.
Yeah, the guy, the water aerobics guy, is really amazing. His name is Juan, and he is actually a trainer.
Mm-hmm,
So he really does everything that he does that you would do on your feet
mm-hmm.
and working out with him and in his studio. You really are doing that in the water. So
Oh,
he he has us running up and down and jumping up and down and you the water's cold. Sometimes the water's cold and you're sweating. That's the
that's a good
intensity
thing. That's a
that
good
he
thing.
has going on. And when you come out, you're going like, "Whoo, that was pretty intensive."
That's how you know you're burning those calories, man.
Yeah. So thank you very much for noticing, co-host.
Oh, for sure, man. You know I got your back, co-host.
But yeah, it feels wonderful. In a couple of months, when I go back to the doctor, they will take me off the blood pressure pills because the blood pressure will be stabilized, and I can no longer be dependent on a drug. It's very
Yeah,
hard to remember to take it every day.
yeah, those drugs, man. We got to get rid of them.
Yeah, so yeah. But other than that, life has been great. This week was a pretty interesting week. What did the man in the White House? I cannot say his name, but you guys know who I'm talking about. Had what he called Liberation Day, and
He
that was
calls it Liberation Day.
that's what he called on April 3rd when he did the 10% across the board tax a tariff for all countries, even some little country in the middle of the Caribbean that doesn't export anything to us.
Oh man.
And then I read today that in China, we literally the amount China had reduced our tariffs down to 7%,
Uh-huh. And he
but
doubled it.
and so he sent it up to 10, and now they went up. Okay, well we're gonna do 35 then.
Oh Lord. Man, he just going around picking fights with everybody.
with everybody. And that's what it is. It's just like, okay, this is ridiculous. And still thinking, I mean, he is very much convinced that tariffs are going to increase revenue for us. It's going to increase and give us a beautiful, as he calls it, great economy. And then I don't know if you were watching the news yesterday, but cars they've already started. You know, back during the pandemic, when you would go out looking for a truck, it was like $60,000.
Yeah.
Right, $50,000, and we're talking a basic vehicle, not
Yeah.
anything with a lot of bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And then it came down to regular because you bought a car within the last couple of months
Oh
before
yeah.
this crazy, right? And it didn't cost you, an arm and a leg. Mona, my sister bought a new vehicle, but now they added on the dealers have added on like $25,000 a surcharge for the tariff.
See, what this guy doesn't understand is that we, the people, are the ones being impacted by that. He think he's hurting the foreign countries, but he's hurting us because we're the consumers. And
Right, exactly.
if the products we want will need to be imported in here, then that's where the foreign countries' tariffs hit us.
Hit us.
So this is crazy, man.
And then on top of that, the stock market 2 days in a row. I mean,
Took a
anyone that
dive.
has, anyone that has a portfolio somewhere, I know most people are afraid to look at it right now because it's scary. They don't even want to see it. They're just like, okay, I'll come back later, 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 later. But I mean, he got the stock market. Everything has crashed. Everything is like blood bath red. So it's
Oh
like,
man.
um,
He might be exiting sooner than we think, then, huh?
hopefully, because I would imagine that the people that the wealthy people, when there was actually as of Wednesday, $2 trillion lost in the stock market.
Wow. That that's not good.
No, that's not good
Not
at
good
all.
at all.
And he's lost 45, 46 court cases.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. How many more does he have to go?
Well, there's him and between him and Elon, they're on a crusade. Who's going to have the most lawsuits and most cases? But they're trying to reverse or put a stay to some of those executive orders that he's writing. I don't even think at this point. I don't think he has done anything presidential other than the executive orders since he got in there on January 20th.
So
Everybody else is in the White House working. I don't even know where he is half the time. I think he's sitting at that desk with the pen so he can do his executive orders. But he literally is. You know how when you used to see Biden would be in his office working, and then he'd come on, and we're working on the budget with this congressperson or this committee, and that and then Obama, you saw him working all the time. This one, I guess his legacy is going to be executive orders because that's the only executive position, only job that he has done.
so if you go to the schools and ask the little kids, what does the president do, little Timmy? Well, he writes executive orders.
He signs the document.
He's,
That's all he does.
that's what they're gonna think. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
You
So
wanna
it
you
was.
wanna tell our audience co-hosts how to subscribe
I certainly can.
or
So
follow us here on our channel?
yeah, so guys, welcome to the Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. We are the number one podcast that provides coaching and advice and consulting to our small businesses and micro businesses in the Southern California area. Actually, we because we are remote, we actually can offer services for anyone around the country and around the world if you
That's
choose
right.
to have us as your consultant. But most of the ones that we, a great deal of the ones that we do work with on a daily basis are here in Southern California. I think I have a couple clients that are in DC. I know I teach classes, and I've had people from all over the country
Good.
attending, and so then I've done some coaching with them. So yes, so that's how that's what we do. You can find us over on our YouTube channel, The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. We are here every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Even when we're not here, if we run a rerun, we're still here at 3 p.m. on Friday afternoons. And you can go over to our YouTube channel. And if you hit this subscribe button that I'm going to share with you right now, you then can go over there and subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything. But however, we have an archive of information or over 900 videos that are there for you to take your time and your leisure time and learn everything you need to know about doing business. And it doesn't matter where you are, business is the same in any state that you live in. So that's how you can reach us. And so now we're gonna jump into our conversation today. So here's what we want you guys to think about. So if you guys have been listening to um, the campaign speeches before the election, the campaign speeches after the election, the campaign speeches after the inauguration, all you keep hearing is uh, make America great again. And so Gilbert and I talked about it, and we thought that two things. One, the tariffs are a result of the man in the White House assuming that everybody's out to get him and that we're paying too much, and we possibly could be paying too much for tariffs. But however, um, when we talk about make uh, manufacturing everything here in our country and being completely self sufficient without imports or exports from any other country, then there's a lot of challenges that go along with that. And when you talk about America being great again, you have to kind of do a walk back through history and see what time period was America great again. And then we have to ask ourselves, who was it great for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there this week, the administration, the head person and the leader in the administration seat indicated that for him, make America great again was during the 1700s and up to 1865. Now, for those of us that have had history lessons in school and that are very knowledgeable about American history, you really truly do know what that time frame was, right? And so that's what we're going to talk about today. If it was possible for America, what would it take for it to be a highly coordinated industrial powerhouse again, and which has not been seen since World War II or the mid 20th century? What does that mean, and how did we become that powerhouse during that time frame? So that's what we're going to talk about today. We just want you to imagine and for you to ask yourself what made America great from the 1700s to 1865.
So what we're thinking of is, folks, as an entrepreneur or as a regular resident of your community, we want you to look at it from that standpoint. Now, we're going to be looking at five key pillars which would be embedded in this Make America Great theme that they talk about. So we want to see how great it was for small business and how great it is today for small business. So we're going to do a little comparison of eras and see what's going on. So the five key pillars that we will discuss a little bit about this will be the infrastructure, policy, labor, education, and culture. So those are the five pillars we're going to look at when we're talking about making America great, what areas are covered and what areas are not. Now, this little exercise that we're going to walk you guys through, we want to see how sustainable this economy would be, or this country would be, for approximately 400 million people. Okay. The 400 million, we kind of use that as a broad number because currently we have about 335 million people, citizens here in the United States. Citizens and permanent residents. I must make that differentiation because some people are going to say, they're not all citizens. So I want to make sure I say citizens and permanent residents alike. So they all tallied up to that 335. And of course, 51% of those are female and 49% are male. So just a little something, a little trivia to put out there for you guys. So what we want to do is we need to scale up and see how the sustainability aspect works um, for a small business and for folks who operate within the United States. How do we become self-sufficient? Well, if we're looking at the food system itself, then that's one of the first thing we want to say. All right, what is food tied to? How does that system become self-sufficient? Was it self-sufficient before? What was it like in the 17th century or 18th century? So we're going to touch on that a little bit. We want to see if they say the economy was resilient and sustainable, then we want to walk you down memory lane, do some comparisons here, and see where it goes and how it works. So here's a quick breakdown of what it would take in order for us to be self sufficient and self sustaining. So, the first thing I want to look at right here is the fact that they had land use and capacity as one of the things that was making us sustainable back in the day. Now, the current status, the U.S. has 900 million acres of farmland that we all use to produce food. We do agricultural product production, and that is used to feed many of us, most of us. Back in the day, we had a lot of land, but most of the land wasn't being farmed. Most of the land wasn't being prepared to provide food and sustenance to our citizens. So those are key things to look at. Now, when we're talking about sustenance, we want to look at livestock. We want to look at crops that are exported. There are different types of things that's exported. And my co-host and I, we were talking about back in the 1700s, what products did we really export or import? And we're going, Well, one of the main products or key products for productivity here in the U.S. that we used to import was slaves. We imported slaves back in the 1700s to work the soil, work the farmlands in order to create cotton, which is the key product back then, in order to generate revenues for the slave owners so that they can be wealthy, and the slaves wouldn't really get anything out of it because they were not paid for their services. So they were providing free labor to landowners and slave owners so that they can become rich. The economy could become rich, but the slaves, our foreparents, didn't really, what we would get to the slash over the shoulders, with a whip or something to that extent. That was our payment that we got. So those were some of the things that we can look back at when it comes to making. If America was great back then, those are some of the things we could see. And the next point that my co-host mentioned was, who was it great for? Making it great. Was it
All
great
of us.
for some as opposed to others? you know so we know it wasn't great for us because we were put to work and we weren't being paid for it. As a matter of fact, later on in this show, we're going to do a little table, a little comparison to show you pretty much if we were to assign a wage to our foreparents who were slaves, working those fields for 16 hours a day, how much we should have generated and how much we actually got, which is going to be very
Yes.
interesting to you guys. So we talked about that. I'm going to have my co-host talk to you guys a little bit. We talk about the land use and the capacity. I want my co-host to talk about the adjustment needed to make this thing work. So, co-host,
Yes.
you want to
So if
address
we
that
were
part for
to,
us?
mind you, and we are going to take you into deeper detail, because when certain Americans are speaking of making America great again, they are speaking of a time when America was the cotton kingdom, and 75% of the world's cotton was actually produced here in the United States of America, in the southern states of this country. The West actually had not really been developed at that point in time. You had really the Eastern Seaboard, and then you had the southern states. Um, so in today, so if we were going to make a great America great again, and if we started in the agricultural space, we most definitely would not be selling cotton, and we wouldn't be growing cotton, because at this point we would need to be able to grow all the crops that we grow. We'd have to shift from exports into and industrial crops to direct human consumption, and that would include all of our fruits, all of our vegetables, all of our legumes, and our grains would have to be produced here in America. That also would mean that we would be looking at increasing. We would have to. It could not come from just farms. We would have to increase urban and vertical farming in our population, so that we can make sure we reduce the supply chain burden. And then we would need to, because our lands have not been used for producing food for human consumption, then we would have to treat and improve the soil health and reverse the depletion of the regenerative practices. Now, for those of you who are out here that are gardeners, and I'm one of those individuals, and I'm sure you've done a lot of studying on gardening, and just for us to have our small little gardens in our backyard, it is quite costly. And to produce like enough crops for a family of five, and we are looking at that right now. It requires a lot. And we would have to fill up our whole entire backyard up and down in order to feed us completely, and we'd be completely dependent on our gardens. And but now you're talking about America producing all of the food necessary for 335 million people in this country. So that would be some of the things we're looking at. And then you'd have to, as Gilbert was saying, the infrastructures to make that happen. So we'd have to have new process. You would have to build we'd have to invest in the infrastructure, right? We'd have to build local and regional food processing hubs so that we can be completely reliant on ourselves. We'd have to um, our investment in cold storage and transportation so that we can make sure that fresh food would get to the urban communities efficiently. And then we'd have to upgrade the water irrigation in most of our cities, most of our states, to make them drought prone and invest in water conservation tech. So that would all come to a wonderful cost of 500 to $1 trillion over a 10-year period. And it could not happen overnight.
Woo-wee.
It would take years for it even to get to the place where it was producing enough food for 335 million people to eat. Every day, not just once a year, every day. We all have to be eating 3 meals a day at the least, and our shelves in our supermarket would have to be full.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Now, for those of you who are listening to this show, we're on every week from 3 to 4:30 every Friday, 3 to 4:30, and it's the business zone with Crystal and Gilbert. I want you guys to participate. If you know anything about what we're talking about, I would like you to pretty much put something in the chat that let us know that you're paying attention and you have a clear understanding about how money works, what's needed to produce certain products to keep the economy going. My co-host and I, we were just talking about the stock market and how it's been in free fall for the last 2 days. So, if there are things that you can do to keep some level of sustainability going, that's a good thing. So, with that being said, I just want to put it out there that we talk about infrastructure, we talk about the adjustment needs that one would need to do if we're going to compare our current day operations with the 1700s. Because since folks are saying "Make America Great Again," and that's a good slogan, I just I I just wanna to really, have you think about it. Who was it great for? And if we were living in those times today, how well would it serve us? How profitable will it be? How automated would it be? Would it be functional? We don't think so, because a lot of the technologies that we have today, they didn't have back then. Things that will make your life easier and simple. So I just want to kind of address those things. Now, with infrastructure investment, you got processing facilities, which would include building local, regional food processing. Um, Besides that, there would be hubs to reduce resilience or centralizing mega
Hmm.
facilities. So there would be a facility that will do, for example, peas manufacturing. So you got peas, you've got what they call legumes, and those are things that are just like peas
I guess
that
beans.
you can use to market, But the question is
So,
how
and
much could you
here is
get
the
for
bigger
that? So
question, Gilbert. So, in the last couple of weeks, since the inauguration, they've been ICE has been rounding up the migrant workers who actually for
wow.
the farms and the crops that we are growing, they've been hired. They were hired specifically to go out and harvest all of the crops. So
So work on
yeah.
improving the
Well,
soil, huh?
and
The
and
health.
they're there to, there's a season, there are 4 seasons in the gardening or in the food growing world, And at the end of each one of those
Yeah.
seasons of growth, they have to harvest. And so we're talking acres and acres at nine. What did you read up there? 9 million. What was it? 900 million acres of land, farmland. So the farmer is not going out and harvesting 900 million acres of land. And we're talking 2, 3 acres. And I don't know if you guys know what acres are, but they are not a walk around the block. And let's say if you're picking strawberries or oranges or lettuce or corn, it requires a large number of individuals to go out there to do that. Now, they're being paid in today's world, and they've been trained. But again, they're doing jobs here in America that the average American does not want to do. And so that's why they've hired migrant workers to do it, because most Americans don't want to do it. But when we talk about, and this is going to get to the meat of the show today, when they talk about labor and farming in agriculture here in America, then there is some significant information that you guys need to know on how America became so wealthy in the 17 to 1800s. There was a reason why that took place. It just didn't happen. So let me give you a little memory lane, guys. America, again, basically the sole crop was cotton. Cotton was the heart of the economic growth here in America. But it came at a very profound moral and human cost. So the cotton economics was, by early 1800, cotton had become the most valuable export that the United States had, and the invention of the cotton gin in 1793 made it easier to separate the cotton from the fibers and from the seeds, and vastly increasing production. The South became known as the Cotton Kingdom, supplying, as I said earlier, over 7,500 percent of the world's cotton by the mid 1800s. So, how did they become the Cotton King? And how did this particular crop fuel the textile industry in the U.S. and in Europe, particularly in Great Britain, um, undergoing the Industrial Revolution? So let me tell you how they did that. By 1860, nearly 4 million black people were enslaved in the United States of America, mostly working in
Mm-mm. Say that again, Cole. Say
400
that again.
million black people were enslaved in the United States, and mostly working in cotton producing states like Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. So I'm going to let you guys come to the conclusion of why this time frame made America great. And so let's talk about how was that wealth built?
So we had a workforce that was required to work for 16 hours a day at least, and not much rest, not much breaks. They got to work, 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 work. And then they didn't get paid. So all those profits would go in the pockets of the slave owners. And at the time, many of them weren't even paying taxes. So that money that they generate it just revolves. You know, they say the black dollars only stays in the black community for 6 hours now, and the Latino dollars stay 48 hours. Well, the slave dollars were staying in the community for months and months and months
Tuna.
because they didn't have a say so
Right.
in it.
So the value of raw cotton export in 1860 was $191 million over, and if we adjusted it to today's inflation, it would be $7 billion today. The
Wow.
U.S. produced 4 million bales of cotton, and nearly all of it was harvested by the enslaved labor. So enslaved labor is called free labor. And so scholars
Wow.
estimate that the economy, including trade, manufacturing, banking, and shipping, accounted for half of the U.S. GDP in the antebellum South. So you guys hear me? Half of the U.S.'s GDP, the gross, what is it? The gross domestic
Domestic
right
product.
product was cotton, and it produced 4 million bales of cotton. Now, the enslaved people were viewed as assets, economic assets, because by 1860, the total value of enslaved people in the U.S. was over $3 million in 1860 dollars, and it was literally worth more than all of the railroads and factories combined. Just the value
Wow.
of those particular human beings, we cannot forget they were human beings. So that's over $100 billion in estimated value in today's adjusted inflation, showing how deeply the economy was tied to slavery. And so
So those guys were making a lot of
they
money
were
back
making
then. You know,
tons of
it was
money,
equivalent
Gilbert.
to 100 billion. Man. And they didn't want to. They didn't want to pay taxes. Remember, they started that war,
Right,
the
because they didn't want
Boston
to pay
Tea
taxes
Party.
to
That
the
was
to Great Britain.
in the
Right.
1700s. Right.
That's when we create
Wow.
that's when they were in 1776, when they were signing the the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. It'd be independent
Independence.
from
Right.
Great Britain. So here's the thing, guys.
Wow.
So Gilbert and I became very, very curious at this point. So we started asking some very pointed questions, like how many millionaires were created from slavery and cotton?
Yeah. I want to know, audience. You want to know, right?
um, the Mississippi River Valley, which was Mississippi, Louisiana, and parts of Tennessee and Arkansas, was home to the highest concentration of millionaires in the United States. These millionaires were
Wow.
mostly entirely white plantation owners whose wealth came from enslaved labor, cotton production, and land ownership. So we are talking
Mhm.
about between, you ready, Gilbert? 3,000
Yeah.
to 5,000 millionaires in the U.S. by 1860. And how did they acquire their wealth? Through cotton,
By putting us to work
between
without pay.
cotton, land ownership,
Land
and
ownership,
enslaved labor. That was how
enslavement.
they got their money. So at that
Right.
time, being a millionaire meant at least $1 million in 1860 dollars, and about 35 to $40 million in today's U.S. dollar.
Wow. That's
Now,
unbelievable, man. That is
there are many companies
unbelievable.
out there that are creating, that are millionaires and billionaires and trillionaires, right? Not trillionaires yet. I think they're still at
Mhm.
the billion mark. So let's put this in context.
Right.
Their wealth was not just in cash; it included land, it included cotton profits, and the enslaved people that they owned. So that is how they got their wealth. Land, cotton profits, and enslaved human beings. Okay?
Wow. That was allowed by
Yes.
law back then. So making America great is
Yep.
going back to
That's the
those
only way.
times, right? where they they had free
Free labor.
labor, right? It's like having a machine that makes money, free money for them. That's what those slaves were. Because yeah, what they would do is pay for them, right? They
Yes.
would pay
So let's get down
how
to that.
much?
But before we
Twelve
get to that, we
hundred.
just want you guys to know the slave-based fortune is the foundation of majority of the very wealthy, the super rich in our country. Not the nouveau rich. We're going to say the
Right.
rich that have been here for generations and generations. This is where their wealth came from. And so now let's go down to, because Gilbert and I, we were really into the questions at this point because we
Oh,
wanted to
for
know
sure.
a number of things. So we wanted to know how many American corporations, banks, and wealthy families built fortunes during the 18th and the 19th century through direct or indirect ties to slavery, particularly from the cotton
Hmm.
economy, which was then passed
Right.
down and fueled the power and the prestige and the privilege that they have today. So this is what we found out, that banks and financial institutions was J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, yes.
What?
So
Those those
so
criminals? They own slaves
yes,
too as
right. So
assets?
originated from banks that accepted enslaved people as collateral for loans. So the bank in
Wow.
2005, J.P. Morgan Chase acknowledged two of their predecessor banks held 13,000 enslaved people as slaves.
So, co-host, if I run a bank, J.P. Morgan Chase
Mm-hmm.
or Wells Fargo, and you are a slave owner, you could come to me and said, Gilbert,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Banker, I would like to borrow $150,000 from you, and in exchange for collateral, I want to give you
Yes,
these 50 slaves. That's my
right.
collateral right
That's how
there.
that happened. And
Wow.
so now
Mhm.
in this 2005, when J.P. Morgan acknowledged this, they did a public apology. Oh wow! And created a scholarship fund as a partial reparation. Now, Gilbert, while I'm telling the others, can you see if J.P. Morgan eliminated their DEI policies um, in January of this year?
I'm sure they did.
I just want to verify if they eliminated their DEI policies.
I am sure they did because they. This is unbelievable, man. They were in the slave manufacturing and holding as asset business, and they felt like all they have to do is
That's
give a
it.
public
Just a public
apology. That's
apology.
it. No compensation, no
They
uh
offered a
what do
scholarship
they
fund
call that?
reparations. They didn't offer no partial reparations with a scholarship fund.
We don't need no college funds, man. We need money to start our business, to run our business, to become entrepreneurs, so we don't have to deal
Exactly.
with
Can
these
you
folks
tell me,
anymore.
Gilbert, how many women get loans at banks?
4%, guys, 4% of women, and most of those are not minorities either.
Exactly.
4% of women business owners get
Okay.
loans from banks, and most of
Right.
them are not
And,
minorities.
and
So
the
you can
percentage for
do the math
minorities
right.
acquiring significant loans that would help them grow their business is below what 2%, 3%, maybe 2%.
Right.
So keep that in mind.
They don't even want to give minority
No,
entrepreneurs
don't even want to
lines
give
of
them lines of
credit,
credit.
because really what we prefer is lines of credit.
Right.
We don't want any loans. We want lines of credit so we can purchase, we can hire people, we can purchase supplies to run our business
And
and other things like that. Have some
right,
working
right.
capital.
And just go in with the same thing everybody else goes in. Your financials, to show that you have good credit and you can get a line of credit. But no, Wells Fargo merged with Wachovia. Everyone remembers Wachovia Bank, which traces its roots back to banks that actually financed southern plantations. Bank of
Wow.
America gained parts of its foundation through acquisition of banks that profited off slavery and cotton. So these three banks,
Wow.
if you guys are banking at them, know what you got, know where they came from. Now let's talk about the insurance companies. New York Life Insurance issued insurance policies on enslaved people, treating them like property. So, Gilbert, we talked about this, and you said that what did you say? You said something earlier about treating them like property. So, so when they
Yeah.
in Jamaica, you said
Assets.
when they died because of the amount of work that they did.
Yeah.
Well, the
Right.
plantation owner actually got reimbursed. He issued a claim for the loss of property to his insurance company, New York Life.
Let me give the audience paint a picture to the audience so they can understand, because I don't think a lot of people know about this, because they either didn't have anyone who tell them about slavery or what that whole economy was about. But this is what happened, especially in the Caribbean plantations, where they manufacture sugar cane to produce sugar and export it to England and all the places. That's where those guys make a lot of money. So what they did, the slave owners on the plantations, they would buy these slaves for, male slave, they'll pay, $1,200 maximum for a slave that's in good shape, is all buffed and strong. So, they can go out there and chop the cane from the fields and then take it to the mills, the sugar cane mills where they produce
Mm-hmm.
the sugar, right? So they would have those slaves working for 16, 24 hours, right? They wouldn't want them to fall, they wouldn't want them to go home, take a break, go to sleep or anything like that. So many of the slaves would they'll fall asleep on the job, and because they're working in a
Mm-hmm.
mill house, right? These mills are running 24/7. So, and it's a very dangerous job. So, and they didn't have any safety measures or precaution back then. So people weren't protected from these machineries. So many of the slaves, because they're tired and hungry, and there was no incentive to preserve them, they will fall asleep at the mill, the machinery, and they'll fall into the machine. The machine crushed them and killed them. Now, this is where the insurance companies come in, because the slave owners insure these slaves with the insurance company. So they would get a bigger payout to have these slaves. They would prefer to have the slaves work these long hours and die so they can collect insurance money than to actually let these slaves take breaks and go home to their families and rest and all of that. Because they're going, man, I'm paying $1,200 for this. Take out an insurance policy on the slave who
Mm-hmm.
dies on the job.
Yeah, they got their money.
I'm
They got their
getting
money back. Let's
I'm
just say that.
yeah, I'm getting 10,
Right.
20,000 for that. So that was like a big profit making scheme that they had back then too. So sorry to take up your time on that,
No,
Carlos,
well,
but I
because
had
that
to tell the
it
people.
is relatable, right? Because we gotta be real and honest about what we're talking about when we talk about this. And then Aetna Insurance apologized for selling life insurance policies for compensating enslavers who whose slaves died, whether at their hand or at the machinery's hand, whatever it was, they were being compensated. Fernando, thank you to Fernando.
Yeah.
Fernando indicated that J.P. Morgan Bank was changing equity to opportunity and renaming it diversity and opportunity. I believe Bank of America has changed everything to opportunity and talent. And I am sure if we look up New York Life and we look at Aetna Life, they also have changed theirs, and Wells Fargo as well. Let's move on into the
I would love to see them have done more though, instead of just changing some names. Do more for entrepreneurs. Provide them funds instead of giving them loans and lines of credit.
Right,
Give them some
exactly.
grants.
Well, now they
Give them
want to.
grants.
They all fell in line because they think they were. My mother used to say, if you live in a glass house, you really shouldn't throw no stones. So all of these
Exactly.
people, in my opinion,
Exactly.
live in a glass house. Universities funded by slave wealth. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Georgetown. These schools were funded by donors who made their money from slavery, cotton, or the trade. So when you apply to Harvard and you can't get in, when the school was paid for from the backs of your people, it's
Right. And it was built. It was
right.
built by them too. Harvard and all those state houses
By
built
slaves.
by slaves.
Some owned enslaved people directly, especially Georgetown. Wealthy families. The Brown family, which is Brown University, made early wealth from the slave trade and shipping goods like rum and cotton. Brown University has since acknowledged and studied its ties to slavery. We don't know what the result of that. They now know that they were slaves. They had some slaves.
Wow.
The DeWolf family, which is in Rhode Island, was America's largest slave trading family, still influential, and have descendants, and some descendants have publicly addressed their family history. Then let's move to the textile companies.
Wow.
The textile and trade companies, then and now, northern textile mills in Massachusetts, Rhode Island grew rich off of cheap southern cotton. Some involved in major corporations or have passed wealth into new industries such as the railroads, the banking, and later oil and tech. So again, this money has it's been 250 years. This money still has life that was generated by
Mhm.
the enslaved people. So
So, when we do our comparison, where we're talking about, how long money stays in the black community, it's only 6 hours. For
50
them, it was
years,
250
250
years,
years.
right?
That's how long their money has stayed in their families, 250 years. Wealth
Wow.
from slavery didn't just vanish. It helped buy land, build schools, start companies, fuel political power, and it still impacts generational wealth in today. And white families are able to pass down land, businesses, and money, while black Americans were freed with nothing and often forced face law and violence blocking economic success. Uh,
I want to speak to that part a
okay.
little bit, co-host, because a lot of people don't understand what's going on. So back then, right, a little after 1865, when they claim they emancipated slavery, which we know they never emancipated slavery. Slavery was still going on for a long time. Even some slaves, they didn't
Mm-hmm.
know they were free. They didn't
Well,
even know they were
the
free.
ones
They're
in
still
Texas
working,
didn't. They didn't get the
like
message until much later.
exactly. So they've been there working like crazy while, and that's when
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln, president, was saying, okay, for all these atrocities, I'd like to give you guys, all the existing slaves, I'd like to give you, 40 acres and a mule as our level of compensation for all the hardship
Mm-hmm.
that you went through. And then many of the white slave owners are going, no, why are they getting land? They're not supposed to get land. So run about then, and then that's when, was run about the birth of the KKK, the
Mm-hmm.
Ku Klux
Mm-hmm.
Klan, right? Run about the birth. So those guys start, getting into uprising, trying to fight against Lincoln and his crew, saying, hey,
Mm-hmm.
these guys don't deserve this. What are you talking about? because they still feel like slaves shouldn't be paid for anything.
Mm-hmm.
So they started an uprising. They started fighting against government officials, starting some of the slaves. I think 130 or 150 slaves were given land and some
Well, they're supposed to
mules,
be
right?
40. We were supposed to
So
get a
they didn't
40,
like that.
40 acres and a meal, but that really never did happen.
Exactly. So they decided to confiscate some of that, kill the slaves and all of that, right? So that's what they were doing back then. They had this guy named Andrew. I don't remember his last name, but he was a big advocate, for those guys, saying, "Hey, you guys, you do what you need to do to get these land back." So that's what they did. So that's when they came up with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, and one of them states that if you been convicted and go to jail,
Mm-hmm.
right, you cannot own land. So what they did, all the slaves that had some land from that agreement with the government, they decided to arrest them
Mm-hmm.
illegally and put them
Mm-hmm.
in jail. Now, when they arrest the slaves, put them in jail, guess what? Now they're a convict, so they cannot own land. So that's where the slave owners come in and take the land
Right.
away from these
Exactly.
guys. You see what I'm saying? That's what they did. So that last bullet that
Mm-hmm.
you talked about said
With
freed
nothing,
with
yeah, there
nothing
was nothing
and
with state
face
law and
law
violence
and
blocking
violence,
the economic.
blocking economic. That's what that was all
Mm-hmm.
about right there. That's what it was. Because if you're a convict, you cannot own land. So they take away the land, they dispossess them, and all of that. So that's what was going on. And which leads to our current economy and our current society. A lot of us get unfairly put into jail, right? Cops pull you over. Hey, you look
Mm-hmm.
suspicious. You
Right.
fit the description. They arrest you. Now you got a criminal record. Can you get a loan from the bank? No. Can you get into universities? No. Can you get certain jobs? No. So that's what they do. So it's a perpetual
It is.
cycle
And
right
can you
there
vote?
to keep
No.
us. You cannot vote. So it's a perpetual cycle that keeps us in a certain little box. And, we wonder why certain groups get certain privileges and certain groups don't. Those are some of the things. And then on top of that, they come up with this red line. The government came up with this red lining philosophy, which means if you live in a certain region, a certain neighborhood, you cannot get opportunities. You can't get housing, can't get good education, you can't get good jobs. So all of these things are connected, man. So
All of
I just
them.
want to
All
put
of
that
them.
out there to let folks know the economic atrocities about this.
Right. When we're talking about making America great again, we want to be clear on when that was.
Yes.
Now, so again, Gilbert and I, when we were on a roll, by we got time, we got into this. We are like, okay. So we found out that over 4 million. Um, um, there were over 4 million enslaved people who helped uh, four states actually become wealthy, which created generational wealth that has
Hmm.
carried on for 250 years, probably more than that if we actually calculate it, because we still in the same situation we almost were before, right? So I think the
450 years now.
yeah, it's probably 450 something years right now if we did our calculations. We will calculate that in a minute. But so we asked ourselves, and then we went to do some more research and said, are there any industries or companies or governmental entities that employ close to 4 million people, right? Approximately 4 million employees and workers. And they said, yes, there are modern industries, companies, and governmental entities that employ around 3.9 million people, which was the total of enslaved people in 1860, which were forced to do forced labor, mostly picking cotton. And cleaning houses and building White Houses and building all of the
State houses.
plantation houses and all of the historical buildings that exist today. So it indicated that the health and wellness healthcare industry, they employ about 20 million people, retail about 15 million people, um, food services and hospitality about 11 million people, education, both private and public, is about 10 million people, and then the U.S. government employs about 2.2 million plus another 1.4 million of military active duty employees, and so that is over $3.6 million. And of course, the state and local governments also employ about 19 million people, and that's including police officers, teachers, and clerks. But what is the difference, Gilbert?
This is unbelievable, man. Because back then they had,
And I think I should share this part, don't you think?
yes, yes, please do, please do.
Yeah, let's
back
share
then
this part.
back then there were 3.9 million slaves. After slavery, they claimed slavery was abolished, but you had 3.9 million slaves that they were supposed to provide 40 acres and a mule to. Because of the atrocities, they think, okay, we'll do that. So now we did our research, and we said, okay, let's compare that time to this time. In the 1860s, after 1865, they had 3.9 million slaves. So those slaves were generating, those slaves were generating over 142 billion per year in terms of payroll. Because
Right. So
again, the slaves weren't being paid,
the
right?
play weren't being paid. So the closest company corporation that we could get to the 3.9 million or the 4 million people is as actually Walmart. So Walmart is the largest employer of worldwide of individuals. Now, in
And they have
comparison,
they have 2.1 million
they had
workers,
2.1
right?
million. And
Yeah.
as Gilbert just said, in 1860, 3.9 million, the single largest labor force in the United States history. I have to say that again. The single largest labor force in the United States history. None were paid.
Mm-mm.
And but they drove entire industries: cotton, tobacco, sugar, shipping, finance, and more. The only today, if you compare, and this is what we did, we compared the workforce um, on pay what these entities that's got the largest workforce, what they're paying their employees versus what the enslaved was not paid. Now the enslaved brought in profit. The
To the tune of
enforced
142 billion,
right, exactly.
while
So
Walmart, with a 2.1 million workforce, they the revenue the revenues what they paid was 68 to 70 billion dollars.
right, but
That's a big
there
difference.
that's a big difference. So that was their yeah, that was their, I think that was up there somewhere, right? How much money their gross profits based upon what the and then their payroll. So everyone who is out here that's a business owner, you know that payroll is the largest outgo in expenses that you have to pay. And
Mm-hmm.
they're fixed expenses most of the time. So
Mm-hmm.
you can't, and once you set up payroll, there is no, I can't pay you next week.
Right,
Payroll is consistent until you let that employee go. In
right.
my world where I've actually processed payroll, payroll is generally somewhere between 45% to 65% of every company's operating
their
budget,
expenditures, right? Their overhead, right?
their overhead, and this is in order to produce um, in order to produce what you're producing, your revenue. To get your revenue, you have to have employees. So um,
So
the
they were just getting free money out of putting the slaves to work. Nothing going to the pockets of the slaves, and these slave owners were just gathering all of that money, and its equivalence today is 142 billion.
Right.
Oh,
So they're estimated. So we're using Walmart as our comparison company because it's as close as we can get with the largest payroll. Um, and they have international employees as well. But their payroll is somewhere between 68 and $70 billion a year. So we're going to use them, and that 70 billion is more than the GDP of over 100 different countries, as you guys can see in the diagram right there. So we kept asking questions, and so the enslaved workforce was the 3 million. They worked somewhere between 10 and 16 hours a week, 6 days a week, basically full time and overtime. And there, if you were going to do an equivalent, so as Gilbert just said, the equivalent of payroll for enslaved people was $142 billion, 2 times the amount of Walmart's $70 billion.
and that's the revenue that they generated. That's the revenue they took home because they didn't have to pay anything out to the slaves. Slaves
No, they
get
took the
sick,
whole. They took their whole 70
they
billion.
take the whole thing.
Yeah, they didn't subtract the 70 billion from whatever. They took their whole within. So we look at
And
it in
then and
perspective.
then and then co-host on top of that, they have the nerve to go to the government and ask for subsidies. Say, hey, government, we're not really doing well in manufacturing our cotton. Can you give us some subsidies? You see what I'm saying? So
Oh,
even
I got
though
a better one. I have a better one for you for Walmart. When mostly Walmart does is um, they employ their employees. They hire their employees at less than 20 hours a week, 25 hours a week,
wow,
so that they don't have to pay them any benefits. So
wow.
then when you apply at Walmart, then they give you an application to go down to your Medicaid or your Social Security office or your Medicare, depending on what is called in your state, to apply for SNAP and for um, uh, um, uh, money to make up the difference of what they're gonna pay you,
So
and
see, that's
and
their
to get
that's
your
their
health
way.
insurance.
That's their way of applying for subsidies. See,
Yes, that's their
even
way
though
of
they're
playing.
making all that money, they're applying. And that's what these corporations do, man. And no one is paying attention to them. No one is looking at them. Corporations get away with a lot of stuff that individuals like us cannot get away with. You know,
Exactly. And because of that, when Elon was saying, where, people on Medicare and people on Social Security are parasites, and people on disability parasites. Well, Walmart is actually and SNAP making sure that this is how you subsidize what they're paying you so that you and your family can live. You go and apply for your SNAP, which is the food program. You go and apply for Medicare or Medicaid, so you have health insurance, and then you apply for if since you're making below the poverty line, you probably can get some your monthly I don't even know what they call that, like you're getting a check from the government in order to help take care of you. There's a word for that. I can't think of what it is. So that is so it's not the people that are the parasites. Who's the parasite?
the
the
corporation.
company the company that's sending you there in the first place, instead of paying you a decent salary so you don't have to be on government subsidies. All right, guys. So now we're
So,
gonna
so
get it.
looking at this table, co-host, looking at this table that you have here, says the average value of enslaved people in 1860s was this: the male 18 to 30, they cost 1,000 to 1,800. The equivalence today is 35,000 to 65,000. So if they were enslaved today, that's what they would be paying for them: 35
Yeah,
to 65,000.
yeah,
And the women, adult women, they were they were bought for $800 to $1,200, and they got to be in good shape. They got to be childbearing shape, right?
yeah. They were
So
the fifth. They had to have. They had to be an excellent. It was based upon their age, their physical condition, and their skill set. So if they were, you were very valuable. If you were a blacksmith, you were very valuable. If you were a cook, you were very valuable. If the matron, the one that took care of the household, and you're valuable inside the house, you're valuable outside the house. I mean, you're more valuable inside the house than you were working in the field, and unless they were premium field hands, which means that they predict or they were able to pick, you know,
the cotton.
the number of bales of cotton that they picked in that 8 hour, 16-hour day. And then, of course, the women were valuable if they could produce more babies, especially after the emancipation and the abolishment of slavery. Then they started their own slavery mills, impregnating and making sure the women were impregnated so that they could continue to produce uh, people. Because as long as you own them, they still belong to you. So they didn't really. This is before they freed us. This is when they were getting so much outrage for owning people. Then they started to not go to the town squares and buying them. Then they just started to produce their own.
So even the kids from 0 to 12 years old, they were purchasing them too for anywhere from $100 to $500.
Yeah, even the children. Yeah, because the children were growing up. So then that equivalent. So the total value of all of the enslaved people, market value was $3 billion, and that's over
Wow,
$100 million today. And
wow.
so these are just not numbers, guys. This was just a very brutal system that went on for 250 years. And they demoralized, they dehumanized millions of people. And even today, they're still dehumanizing Black people, um, even though, it's the result of them. So that was pretty much what we
And
discovered.
that's not a one-time thing, because we've heard news that recently Amazon, they've got their workforce there, and they weren't letting them taking breaks, bathroom breaks, none of that stuff. They had to, stay on that, what do you call that line?
Oh,
Uh,
the
assembly. They have to stay on
assembly
that
line.
assembly line and work nonstop. So it's not a one-time thing, man. This is bred into the corporate philosophy and the corporate structure. So this is going to be ongoing. And the government, they don't do anything about that. They let
Well,
these
that's why
folks.
they wanted to be America great. There are many senators and congressmen, especially from the South, was saying, "Well, we want to go back to when America was great." Well, if you're from Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, New Orleans, Louisiana, any of those places, of course you want to go back when you paid no money.
Yeah,
So, 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 another question Gilbert and I asked was, um, what was the expected return of investment? Because we're always talking about return of investments in our business, right? We
yeah,
ask our business owners, what is your return of business or your return of investment? Well, um, this gets to the heart of slavery, um, because basically uh, slaves were an economic machine designed for profit and profit only.
yeah.
And slave owners, holders, they treated their human, they were treated human beings like capital investments and significant returns. So this blew us away. So a significant return, we're going to just get to the bottom of it, is that if you take how many years, what they worked, how many, estimating the number of years over their lifetime with zero wages, the return on investment for a an enslaved person and including the
So
initial
they
cost.
would pay 1,200 for that, and then they would get back 42,000 because of the insurance and all of that stuff they carry on a slave, right?
Well, that was equivalent. No, the 12,000 was the value in 1860. The
Oh,
modern day equivalent was 42,000. So if they
42,000.
were buying a person today, it would
Right.
be $42,000. If
Wow.
their lifetime invest return on the 1,200 was between 45 to 6,000, which would be almost 200,000 plus in today's uh, um, um, equivalent, but the return was over 500% return on that initial 1,200 investment, 4 to 6 times over the life of an enslaved person, not counting the children born into slavery who were treated as profit generating assets. So the cruel truth is that the enslaved people, um, the expectation was enslaved people to pay for themselves within 5 to 10 years. So after they got their return, they didn't care whether you're alive or dead.
That's what I'm saying, man. They have them working long hours a day because they know if they die on the job, they're getting their 42,000.
And they got profits for decades,
Yeah.
especially during in the cotton producing regions, and they considered the children of enslaved people as bonus assets. Reproduction meant more slaves. So when we look at and we balance that out with today, there is far less return on an employee today. You get about 148, about $1.48 in value. If for every $1 a company pays a worker today, you earn back $1.48 in value, depending on the industry you are in. That
Wow.
just blows you away, right? Just
Oh, for
blows
sure.
you away. They got 500% over that $1,200, and so that is what you look at. You are looking at a modern worker at $58 $58,000 a year, lifetime 86,000. They got 146% per year, whereas the enslaved person for the lifetime that they were alive was 500%. So, but the difference is obviously the modern ROI is built on consent, freedom, and wages. The slavery ROI was built on ownership, violence, and zero pay, making it very profitable in raw numbers. And so, with that, go back to our other. You can just go to the middle. This one right here. Um, oh, what happened? This one needs to go away. So with that, you see, if you're going to tell me you want to go back to the way life was, and when America was great, it has to include you not paying any wages for anyone, and that you are getting free labor, because that's the only way you're going to be able to go back to the 1800s and be able to have America great again.
That's the biggest money making scheme this country has ever seen, man. Biggest. And nobody held them accountable. Nobody said anything. They just did whatever they wanted to do.
Right.
Now, the reason many of those slave owners did not kill many of us is because they probably didn't know the law that well. They
Well,
didn't
no, they got more out of you. I mean, they killed you when you were no longer valuable to them.
Right,
But
right,
as long as you had value, you were working the land. So they needed to have you there. You were an asset. You were like a piece of furniture or a cow or a horse or whatever, and you needed money, which is what happened after a lot of the plantation owners died and properties were left to their wives. The slave was worth more than the house or the cattle or the crops that they were growing, especially after the husband died. Now, we can only be fair if we come. And the other thing is, because we're talking about tariffs and just the overall of all the rhetoric that's being spoken today. So let us be clear that the United States of America did have imports from back in 1800s. Because remember, back in the 17 and 1800s, we were owned by the Americas were owned by Great Britain. So,
so the key import were slaves, right?
the key imports, but the South exported cotton to Britain. Britain turned the cotton into fabric and then sold it back to the United States for a profit.
Yeah.
That's how it worked. America also had finished goods, which were from Great Britain, textiles, steel tools, machinery, luxury goods. Remember, it was nothing here before. It was people here, but it was not. It was not a developed land
Wow.
until the Brits came and to Mr. Columbus, who thinks he discovered something, came and thought they discovered something. From France, they got wine, fine clothes, perfume, luxury household goods. From Germany and Persia, they got tools, glassware, scientific instruments. They got sugar from the Caribbean, rum, molasses. The slaves were actually obviously making this happen. Coffee, spices, especially from Cuba, Jamaica, Brazil, and Haiti. From China, they got tea, silk, porcelain, luxury goods for elite American families. This all came through British controlled trade routes, alcohol and wine from France, Spain, Portugal, and luxury goods and elite items, furniture, clocks, books, all of that came mostly for wealthy Americans, especially the southern plantation owners and the northern elite. And then the ports of call were New York City, the number one import in America. New Orleans was the massive trade hub, especially importing goods and exporting cotton and sugar. And so, guys, that is what happened in America. The only thing America exported was cotton, tobacco, rice, and labor. And all of that was produced because of their free labor. The only place in the world that was able to generate their wealth off the backs of free labor. So, what I call that is, Gilbert, the irony of America's greatness.
Unbelievable. The great American scam.
So, for those of you that think that when
It
they're
was great.
talking about America, that they're talking about something, they're talking about a fantasy, because the only way they can get that America back is that they actually
The reenact
enslave people.
slavery.
They have to reenact slavery in order to get that America back, where they're
Wow.
not paying any salary, because what was it, $70 billion, and Walmart makes $680 billion. So you would have to subtract off that $680 billion. This was in 2024. You'd have to subtract off their $70 billion in income in payroll. That's just that expense, not the expense to produce what they do. And so now they would have a less. They'd have because that's 80 billion, this 680. So they would have $610 billion to work with to pay off all of their other expenses, but off the top. And so, what is that as a percentage? If 680, so you really shouldn't try to tell a person that is good with numbers.
They don't know you, co-host. They don't know you.
So they actually do still have a very low cost of and this
Cost of
is,
goods sold.
well, yeah, theirs is about 10% of their payroll, but however, because they don't pay their people a lot of
Right,
money.
right.
And so really, they at Walmart still all their money does go into basically all of their pockets. So that, my people, is the real truth of the matter. And when you hear people speaking of make America great again, understand America was only great. Yeah, they don't produce, they sell. Hello, Dr. Allen. They only resell, but they do have expenses to maintain their stores. Um, and they are paying other expenses, but still, bottom line, they're banking most of their money at most of their money. So just to let you guys know, and I truly want you to understand, as we talked about those industries that actually profited off of um,
Slavery.
slavery. Really think about your bank account at J.P. Morgan. Really think about your bank account at Wells Fargo and Bank of America. And if you have life insurance with New York Life or Aetna, and they've made the decision to change their DEI when they were principally involved in slavery. And remember, J.P. Morgan had 13,000 slaves of their own. So we just want you guys, you make your decisions. You think about what you're hearing when you hear it. Um, and then you make your decisions of whether or not you think America was great when America was great again. We will continue this conversation because we are going to talk about what does it take for America really truly to be self-sufficient, and is that even possible, and what are the costs that are related to that. And so we've done some research on that as well. We will come back next week and talk about that. Let's see. Fernando says, very well prepared. Thank you. You're welcome, Fernando. And America, our amazing Amazon, Walmart will still get tax credit. Yes, for hiring those that receive benefits and who have been in prison, they get a tax credit. You are absolutely correct. They get their money back, and then Trump doesn't want them to pay taxes.
Dr. Robin Allen says, if we stop buying, they will change their minds. Dollars talk loudly. And I agree with you, Doctor. I agree with you, man. So we really got to strategize. I mean, we've been, first of all, I want to say this is April and this is Financial Literacy Month for small businesses. And I want to
Yes.
make sure you guys are understanding how your finances work, how your money work with all these big conglomerates. So yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Robin Allen, and thank you, Fernando, for those amazing words that we need to pay attention to and start looking at these big corporations and see how they're just scamming the economy in the country. I mean, things that they do and get away with, we can't get away with that. You know,
And
so we want to put our systems in place and make sure that we work together. We support each other as entrepreneurs, and and if we do that, just like Dr. Robin Allen say, the dollars speak loudly. So if we're not spending our dollars with them and we're spending it among ourselves, then there's no way they can have that hold on us as they're doing right now. So yeah, we wanted to talk about this because when people talk about, the slogan "Make America Great Again" and not taking into consideration how that greatness to them was generated, it's unbelievable. And just a little caveat I want to put out there. Just so you know, folks, and I really want us all to think about this. The White House was built by slaves. All the state houses in every state has a Capitol House. That's where their government sits and make decisions about us. Those were built by slaves as well. All those plantation houses you see in the South, in North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, and all of those were built by slaves as well. So
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Well, the whole darn country was. That's how they benefited. And before we leave, when we talk about eliminating Social Security, Medicare, which is not entitlements, when we talk about handouts and that people are parasites on the American government, let me give you guys a little insight here. So Elon Musk's companies include Tesla, SpaceX, and have received significant government funding, including tax credits, grants, contracts amounting to at least $38 billion, dollars, despite his public statement about reducing government spending. He didn't shut down any of his. He shut everybody else off, but he didn't shut none of his
Well,
down.
he's making sure he shut down the others so he can get that money.
Right. So nearly 2/3 of the funds that these funds that were pledged in the last 5 years, with a record of about 6.3 billion committed to 24 alone. This includes billions in tax credits for electric vehicles, grants for developing electric car technology, and grants for space exploration. Tesla, for example, has earned 11.4 billion in regulatory credits from federal and state programs aimed at boosting the electric car industry. He also benefited from the federal $7,500 electric vehicle tax credit for consumers. He has received 41.9 million in federal grant contracts since 2008, including contracts from National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NASA, and the Department of Defense, which he has cut and shut down. Um, and then he has received 4 billion in governmental support from tax breaks, factory construction, discounted loans, and environmental credits. And that was a report from estimated from the LA Times in 2015. In Nevada, Nevada provided 1.3 billion in tax breaks and other incentives for Tesla's factory there, is the Giga factory. In 2014, Cameron County officials gave SpaceX a 10-year property tax abatement package in exchange for relocating its facility at Boca Chica. The state later chipped in 13 million from a special state incentive fund called the Spaceport Trust Fund to pay for his facility infrastructure. And then XAI, despite only being 2 years old, has benefited from tax breaks, including a 10-year data center deal in Atlanta, which will result in property tax discounts of $10.1 million. I think I heard the other day that Elon, for a $1 million building, he pays $1 a month, $1 a year for that building. And he got that from the government as well. He has reported zero federal income tax on a $2 billion U.S. income in 2024. He avoided all federal income tax on nearly 11 billion over the last 3 years, and he saved $500 million in taxes last year using accumulated depreciation. So this is the man that is telling you that you are a parasite on the government.
You know, if if that's not scamming the government, if that's not conflict of interest, I don't know what is. You see what I mean? I don't know what is. And Dr. Ryan Allen said, what if we create a digital network as a survival kit against racism? You know, that sounds very great. I like that. I like that idea.
Yeah,
I
I'd
really
like to
do.
know what that entails and what that would
Yeah,
look like. And
yeah,
we do have to, I think the first thing is to all of this is the one thing that I find kind of deplorable is that we in America have become so excited and we get so much homage to people who are wealthy, whether they are good character or not, just as long as someone has told you they're the richest man in the world, so therefore they must be good. Well, obviously not, right? And so we need to change our thought process
yeah.
of about money, because money does not make you a good person. We are seeing that right now. It makes
Right.
you it really makes you a narcissistic idiot. Um, and so we need to change our mindsets on that. And Elon is not a good person. This man, no, nothing about him. He has no empathy for another human being. He would probably walk over a baby if the child got hit in the street, unless it was his. Maybe, maybe not. Because right now he uses his children as a human shield because he thinks nobody will shoot him if the baby is with him. So I don't know, guys. We need to change our mindset. But during this month of financial literacy, you really have to understand money, and you have to understand who is benefiting the most out of
Yeah.
money
And why?
and why. And then you got to figure out how you can do it, not like them, but how you can actually change your family's economic and our community's economic situation. Uh, because everything is blatantly happening in your face right now, and
I do like Dr. Robin Allen's suggestion there, though, in creating a digital network, as a survival kit against racism. Because remember, we talked earlier about redlining. Redlining is about excluding us and providing inclusion and opportunity to the others, right?
mhm,
So somehow, some way, we got to come up with a system that we start getting benefits from our effort, from what we do. Part of what we talked about is trading among ourselves, trading with each others, doing business with each other, going after contracts together. As
mhm,
a team, as opposed to individually. Because one of the things we're learning is that contract providers, they prefer to award contracts to groups of small businesses than to just one small business. They want to know that if, let's say, it's a construction project, they want to know that the subcontractors that come together, one is concrete, one is electrical, one is plumbing, one is roofing. You put all of those together, you got a nice little package here. So, as in reference to part of Dr. Allen's digital network, that's
that
how
would
we can
work.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how we can do that. Getting businesses ready and going after opportunities. I just did a proposal for a trucking company. They're going after a contract. It's a state contract. They're rebuilding some roads
Mhm,
up north.
mhm,
So one of the things I did with him is to try to help him to work with concrete guys and other guys, because he runs a dump truck business, so he's dumping debris and waste materials and all of that. So if he can work with the concrete guy, the electrical guy, so he's taking their stuff to
mhm.
the dump. You see what I mean? So that's the kind of thing. Uh,
Exactly, and Dr. Allen's absolutely correct. The reality is we are not where we were during Jim Crow. Let's take advantage of technology to level the field. I quite agree with you.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it is very, very important. We're going to close out the show with just one that's something that I read. The irony of greatness. So yes, America became a world power. Yes, there's innovation, expansion and wealth, but all of that came at a terrible human cost paid by people who had no say, no rights to freedom, no freedom. This doesn't mean we cannot honor the achievements of of the nation, but it does mean we must tell the whole truth. And there's a quote: "A house built on injustice, and this is where we are today, cannot call itself righteous, even if the walls are made out of gold." And that's where we are right today, trying to uh, uh, call this country righteous and great when the walls are not made out of gold. And so that truth is, today the ripple from yesterday, the yesterday of slavery, still shapes America. Racial wealth gaps, unequal education, mass incarcerations, voter suppression, and health disparities. And it gets worse every single day, every single year. And right now, during this administration and all of these nut jobs that are housed over at the White House, uh, they're making this their campaign speech. So understand the real cost of America's greatness is not about blame. It's about truth, healing, and building a future where greatness is measured not by profit, but by justice. And that's truly what we need right now is justice, because there are people getting away with murder. And you're going to reach out to Dr. Allen, right? Because she wants to know,
Yes,
can
I'm
we
gonna
meet
reach out to
offline?
Doctor. I mean, Doctor, if you want, you can give us a call right after we go offline. We're getting ready to wrap up right now in the next minute, so give us a call at that number I put in the chat right now, and let's talk a little bit. Let's see how we can get together, share some mind knowledge here, and see how we can get this going. Because we've got a lot of resources. My co-host, Crystal. She's very knowledgeable. I've been in the industry for over 30 years myself. So we do a lot with small businesses, contracting agencies, and all of that. So let's talk. Let's
All
talk.
righty. All right, guys, we went over a little bit today, but this was a great conversation, one that must we had to have. Next week, we will continue on the conversation, and next week we're actually going to talk about what it would take for America to be completely self-reliant on all of its own resources and no imports from anyone else. Um, which is in a bigger picture would be quite expensive, but we want to talk about the numbers of that. Okay. She says, give you her the number again. It's in the, can you see the chat,
Oh, it's
Doctor?
it's it's in the chat, Doctor. It's in the
Oh, she
chat.
can't see the chat. So she
Oh,
needs you
wait a
to,
second. Oh, I see what happened here. That thing says hidden. Can you see it
okay.
now, Doctor? Give us a yes or a one in the chat. I think it was accidentally hidden. So give us a one in the chat or say yes. Okay, thank you for that. Let me copy this
Okay.
number. I'll definitely give you a call in about 5 minutes if that's okay with you. And then yeah, we can talk a little bit because that's what we're doing right now. We're putting together teams that can go after contracts together because right now the only way we see it here on the business zone is if we don't team up, make small businesses ready, and go after opportunities. Oh, she's not seeing it. What's going on
Oh,
here?
so he took your number, Dr. Allen, and he'll
Yeah,
give you,
yeah, I got your number. So I'll call you in about 5 minutes, right after this show ends, and, see how we can team up and do some things. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. We're trying to get the team together so we can go after opportunities because one of the things that we talk about on this podcast is you cannot get rich working for other people, and doing transactional business, it may be good for a little bit, but there's no guarantee that you're going to be making those money month after month after month. So if you get a contract, then that's contractual business. Contract will be for a year, 2 or 3, or even longer. That's much better because then now you can hire people. You can make a difference in somebody's lives, their family, the community. So that's what we're trying to do here. Co-host.
okay. All righty. Thank you all for joining us and continue to come back next week. And you can go over to our YouTube channel, The Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert, or you can hit that subscribe button and you can take a picture with your the QR code with your phone and go over to our channel and hit the subscribe button so you will get notification when we're about to come on air. We want to thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed our conversation. We actually had a pretty good time asking questions and being more curious
Yeah,
and just
love
learning
this
some
is
things that we didn't
and
know. Well, we did know, but that was quite hard hitting, huh, Gilbert?
yeah, it's to me, it's always good for us to go back in time, look at how they did business, how they operated, how they treated customers and treated people in the community, and kind of reflected on today's day and see what has changed, what has improved, what hasn't changed, what hasn't improved, and try to come up with some solution, like the good doctor just recommended, putting together the digital network. That would be really good. So those are the types of things we're trying to do. Now, co-host,
Yes.
can you put the link in the chat so the doctor can log in and all three of us could talk to her real quickly?
Which?
For the show, the link for the
Oh,
show.
well, once I come off, she won't be able to come on that way.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, now
So we'll
once we
just
go,
call her. We'll
yeah,
call her right.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll call her right after this.
All right, hit the music, and we'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend. Be safe out there, and solidarity is our key word this month.
Yes, solidarity, guys. Remember, this is financial literacy month. April is always financial literacy month. March is women's business month. So we celebrate that. We make sure we talk about women owned businesses, how they're doing, what opportunities are out there, the successes, and all of that. We don't see too many podcasts promoting these types of things. And that's why we're so unique. We've got that business knowledge, over 30 years of experience. We try to promote as many women-owned businesses as possible, as many small and micro businesses. We also do financial literacy, so small businesses can understand that you don't necessarily need a loan to run your business, but you definitely need a line of credit, because that line of credit will give you leverage to, hiring, running your business, that type of thing. Okay. So we're going
Exactly.
to go ahead and say thank you all for tuning in to the Business Zone today. This is a Business Zone with Crystal and Gilbert. We're on every Friday from 3 to 4:30. Today we went a little later because we love the subject. This subject was great.
And thank you, Fernando. I hope to see you next week. All right, everyone. Have a great one. We will
And,
see you all next Friday at 3 o'clock.
and Dr. Allen, I'll call
Yes.
you in a minute. Okay. We'll see you guys next week. We're out.
As a small biz pro, I saw we roll, using procurement, program and control. As a small biz pro, I saw we grow, using procurement, program and control. I'm a businessman, yes I'm a